Marysville, and welcome to Charter Chat, a student-run program here at the Marysville-Getchell International School of Communications. I am your host, Nicholas Bouchard, joined here with
Jan Edwards.
And we're interviewing today Mrs. Clancy, a former math teacher of this school. A lot of students here are going to be very happy to see her on. We miss her dearly. We're just kind of trying to see how life is going for her to this point. So, Mrs. Clancy, how long have you been teaching?
I taught about 20 years. Some of that at Marysville-Getchell, some of it at Marysville-Pilchuck, some at 1 year at Totem. The year before that was at the junior high, which eventually became Totem. And then my first 2 years were at Marysville Middle School, but a total of about 20 years.
That's quite the track record. So which one of those schools would you say is your favorite?
Marysville-Getchell, ISC, of course.
Okay, that's what we wanted to hear.
Good answer.
So, back, the one to become a teacher, where did that arise?
I think I wanted to become a teacher since I was in elementary school. In fact, when I was in, I believe it was 7th grade, we had to write, I know my students always like my stories, we had to write an essay once about what we wanted to be when we grew up. And at the time I went to a Catholic school, and I had nuns for teachers, and I had 3 choices and I couldn't decide. I either wanted to be a nun, an actress, or a teacher. Really couldn't decide. So eventually I did become a teacher, but I originally thought I wanted to be a 2nd grade teacher. And when I tried out elementary school in a practicum, I didn't like it at all and realized that I really wanted to be with older kids.
So what was it about the small children that you didn't like?
Well, when I did a practicum in a 2nd grade class, my son was the same age as the students that I was doing the practicum with, and he was very intelligent, very ambitious, and athletic, and a lot of his teammates from soccer were in the classroom that I was in, but they weren't as intelligent as he was, and I don't know, I guess I was shocked to see that they didn't know how to spell anything, they didn't know how to read, they were wiping their noses on my skirt, they were tugging at my sleeve, and I thought, I don't think I have the patience for this. So that's when I knew I really needed to go to a little bit older group.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any best teaching experiences?
Well, are you talking about a specific incident, or?
It can be a specific incident,
I really have liked teaching at ISC, so much so that since I'm subbing now, I try to teach mostly at ISC. In fact, I don't sub unless somebody calls me, and most of those have been at ISC. I've subbed at Marysville-Pilchuck once, and a few times in ACE, and a few times in SFE, once in Biomed, but all the rest of them have been in ISC. Yeah, I just feel an attachment to the students here and a camaraderie with the teachers. I really liked the collaboration that the teachers use with each other, the way that we did a lot of our planning together, and we talked about students to try to make them be the most successful that they could. So working in ISC, I think, has been the most rewarding for me.
When did you join the ISC?
The ISC was already in existence, and I was teaching at the junior high, and a lot of the teachers that I worked with there and collaborated with were leaving to go up to the high school, to the small learning communities, and I decided to stay for 1 year. So I believe that they had really only been in existence for 1 year, that 1 year that I stayed at Totem, and then the next year I decided to transfer up to the high school also, and ISC was the place that I ended up, and I got lucky. So how many years is that? I think it's has it been 8 years? I'm not sure. I think 6 years in this building and 2 years at MP as part of ISC before we moved into the building.
Okay. So going back to, you didn't like the younger children because they were immature. Now, I took your class for 2 years, and I can say that high school students can be very immature as well.
True.
And so, any notable experiences of like a funny encounter with a student or something out of the ordinary?
Oh, well, one of the incidents that I always thought was funny was one of the students in the back of the classroom, for 2 or 3 days in a row when he came to class, would say, what I thought he was saying was, I can't see, I can't see. But he was really saying, I can't see, I can't see, I can't see. And it took me, I think, 3 days to realize that he was saying my name. And I always thought that was pretty funny. And then last year I had to have eye surgery, and my vision greatly improved. And another one of my students said, now we can see ever. She can see, she can see, she can see. And I thought, and he said it on purpose because he'd known about the other story, and I thought that was cute.
Now that whole I Clancy became a bit of an inside joke with all your classes, so whenever the projector was a bit off, we'd always say, we Clancy, Miss Clancy, and it was...
There was another joke in TV3 and Charger Chat. They used to have some blazers that they wore on set, and do they still have the ones that they call Mrs. Clancy's? No?
I do not know.
They were, I think what I was told was that they were corduroy, and they were blazers, and they called them Mrs. Clancy jackets. So,
Mrs. Clancy
because that's the kind of thing that I
jackets.
always wore when I was in school the first few years.
So, if you had to take, you said ISC was your favorite school.
Mhm.
So if you had to take all your experiences and just put them together, what would be your favorite experience?
One of the things that was really fun was when we had an assembly a few years ago. And I don't know if you've seen the video or not, but Mr. Christopher wrote a rap. And he decided, I think it was supposed to be a competition between the 4 houses, Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta. And Mr. Christopher and I were both in Delta, and he wrote a rap. And he called me, I think it was Little Clance. Lil Clance, maybe. Anyway, I can't remember exactly, but he wrote a rap, and our whole Delta group came into the assembly together, and they hid me in the middle, and I was dressed like a rapper. And as soon as we got up to the front, we started the rap, and then they opened up, and the whole rest of the school could see that this little old teacher is dressed like a rapper, you know, with my pant leg rolled up, and I did part of the rap, and it was really fun, and I really liked the fun-loving, the fact that all of the students in our school participated and felt like family, and I think that was kind of the epitome of it, so that was really fun.
So I would love to keep talking about this, but first we have a little bit of a segment showing how math can take over somebody's life.
Oh.
Yeah, so we will be right back.
Can anyone tell me what the quadratic equation is?
Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a.
Simile, metaphor, simile. It all makes sense.
It all makes sense.
What's up, man? What are you drawing?
It's a tesseract. It's a 4th dimensional cube. You see, it's the dimension that we can't comprehend ourselves.
Oh my god. What's the slope of the Renaissance?
It's all I know. It's all I get.
Welcome back, Marysville, from that little brief segment there showing about how someone can apply math to every inch of their life and it will make you go insane. Slowly. All right, so when we left off, we were talking about your rapping career at the ISC. officially named Little Clance.
I think that's what it was.
I've heard a lot of the students dubbing it as Young Clancy.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Because last year you also did this at the Legacy Assembly.
I did at the end of the year, and it was right before my retirement.
Yeah, that was a really emotional time for everybody, but was the thought was it for irony? Was that the reason you did it, or was there something deeper to the idea?
I thought it was kind of funny, and the reason that I thought it was funny was when we first moved into this building. I don't know if you're aware, but when we moved into this building, math and science were on the top floor. And it occurred to me about a week after we got into the building that all the older teachers were on the top floor and all the youngest teachers were on the bottom floor. And that left the Middle Ages in the middle floor. And it hasn't completely adhered to that through the whole time, but quite a bit. So when it was time to do that ending wrap, it was a way to culminate my career, but it also occurred to me as rather ironic that it was the old lady with the young people doing the wrap. So it was Mr. Christopher, and Mr. Ripley was supposed to be part of it, although his wife had her baby and he couldn't make it, and Mr. Chapin. So it was the young guys and the old lady, and so that's kind of how I saw ending my career was being able to join the young people as I'm retiring.
That's one of the many reasons all the kids at ISC loved you. You were outgoing, funny, and so I'd like to change the subject a little bit here, back to preparing to be a teacher. Like, what did you have to do to become a teacher? I don't imagine it to be very easy.
Well, first of all, I am a mother. I have 5 children. And I already had 2 years of college when I got married, but I quit school to help my husband get through his pharmacy school, which was a 5-year program. And when he finished his program, teaching positions weren't available, so I ended up not going back to school. So years and years later, probably 25 years later, after 4 of my kids were at least partially raised, and my youngest one was in elementary school, I decided to go back to school to finish my 4-year degree and become a teacher. So I went back, and I had to go to the junior college at first to fill in some of the gaps. I had a couple of science classes I needed to take. And then a program came up at Everett Community College, which was actually an extension campus for Western, for their teaching program. So I got involved with that. It was very convenient because it was only 15 minutes away. I still had kids at home, so I had a lot of home responsibilities as a mother and a wife. But it was a perfect opportunity for me to go back and finish my teaching degree. So they gave me my Associate of Arts as well as the teaching credentials at the same time. And I was working during the day as a parapro at the junior high, and then 2 nights a week going to school for 4 hours, I think it was. Maybe more than that. Anyway, 2 nights a week, and then doing homework in between. So it was a pretty full-time experience, having to be a mother and a wife, and and the housekeeper, and working part-time and going to school. Then when I finally finished the degree, I got hired right away at Marysville Middle School and worked there for 2 years. And while I was doing that, I was going to school and getting my math credentials, because the degree that I actually got was for elementary ed. That's the one that was offered. So what you have to do in order to teach math is you have to get what's called a math endorsement. So I did a lot of correspondence courses and a couple of in-person courses and got my math credentials so that I could teach math. And that's when I transferred from the middle school to the junior high, because for 9th grade you have to have an endorsement. And then later on, probably 10 years later, I went back to school with a couple of teacher friends of mine, and we got our masters. When you're a teacher, though, you have to continue to take courses throughout your career. You have to, every 5 years, you renew your certificate, and you have to have a certain amount of credits in order to do that. So taking school was an ongoing thing. While you're teaching school, you're also going to school.
Wow.
Yeah, about that. You know how you're a teacher, you're usually the one that's teaching. Is there anything that you actually learned through your years of teaching?
I think every day you learn something from students. And I know sometimes when I would teach, I would think, oh, they really didn't get it. And I always was open to input from students. So when kids would tell me, I think it would work better if you did such and such, I always tried new things to see what worked best for kids to understand. So, and like I said, I was going to school all the time too. I think one of the things that was a reason that I got hired in the upper level was because I had a lot of psychology classes. You have to take a lot of psychology classes to be an elementary school teacher, but not necessarily to be a secondary teacher. And one of the principals that I worked for made the comment that he really liked hiring elementary teachers with elementary background because they knew a lot of psychology and understood about kids better. And I also think having my own children, you know, having 5 kids of my own made it really easier for me to understand where kids were and what was going on. But I think when you're in the classroom as a teacher, you learn as much from the kids as, you know, you might learn math from me, but I learn about kids from you and about family life, and your families are totally different from mine, and those interactions are an education in themselves.
It's very touching.
Wow, hard to follow that one up, actually. What was the biggest struggle? Because obviously you had family life, you had everything. There was struggles. So, what was the biggest for you? Biggest mountain to climb?
Some of it was family. At first, my daughter was really resentful. I have 4 daughters, but my youngest daughter was really resentful that I was going to be a teacher and not be home for her when she got home from school. And so that was difficult, knowing that she felt like I was doing her a disservice. She's my biggest advocate now and really, really loves me and cares about me and thinks what I've done is wonderful. But that was really hard to try to fit family life after being a homemaker and a mother and a wife for so long, then becoming a career person. That was quite an adjustment for the family, and that was difficult. As a teacher, the difficulties are the behavior issues. And it doesn't happen very often when you really establish a relationship with your students. But every 2 or 3 years, I'll get one student who cannot relate to me and is really resentful and fights me. And I had one student like that probably about maybe 13 years ago. And he was really difficult. He was kind of obnoxious in class, and his best friends were in the classroom, and they would come to me and they would say, please don't let me sit by him, and don't tell him that we requested that, because he's my best friend, but when I sit by him, I can't get any work done, and I really want to succeed in this class. So I had to keep changing the seating charts and moving this young man around because I kept getting complaints from other kids, and he did such things as one day he took a newspaper out, and we were sitting in small groups, and he unfolded the newspaper across all of their work, covering the entire table and all their work. And they said, come on, pick it up. And he was just real belligerent and, you know, thought he was really tough stuff. And I had to take the newspaper away. And eventually, at the end of the semester, I went to another teacher and I said, I really don't think he's going to be successful in my class, because I don't know if he doesn't like women or what it is, but he just won't do any work, and all he does is fight the other kids. And I said, is it possible at semester for you to take him? Because I think he needs a fresh start. I think that's the only way he's going to be successful. And to this day, I feel guilty about that, because when he went in the other class, his behavior was better. He still didn't do any work. He still failed the class, but I think he felt rejected, and I wish that I had communicated it to him better. But that was really difficult, and every 4 or 5 years you get one student like that's really hard, that you feel like you can't relate to. and it makes me feel bad. So
Well, that was powerful. We have a little segment to get to here about there's more than just emotional weights being lifted. We have physical weightlifting, the troubles of one person might have in the
Yeah.
gym. I'd like to apologize for the sound interference on my behalf. We believe that the problem is all sorted out. Would you care to remind me what we were talking about before we went to break?
Oh, we were talking about this student. I don't think you mentioned his name,
No, I didn't.
but apparently he was very poorly behaved in her opinion, and she said she wished she could have actually interacted with him more. But actually, relating with that, do you have any like favorite students that?
No names need to be mentioned.
Yeah, just, you know.
generalized.
I really like students who have a sense of humor. And I think normally after students have me, I don't know if they survive if they don't. Because I use humor in the classroom so much that I've been accused of, what do you call it when you, well, when I retired, I had people say that I was the most inappropriate teacher they'd ever had. Because I think of the weird humor that I use sometimes. I also was accused of roasting students. And oftentimes the kids that I roast, and I'm not really doing that, I'm not making fun of them. What I usually do is I will choose students in the class who are top-notch students, really, really well-behaved, have never had a bad word ever said to them before in their life, and I like to give them a hard time. So and so I guess I really like to use humor in the classroom, and I appreciate when I get it back. So some of my favorites are the ones who've given it back. I had a student many years ago who is now a math teacher, and when he became a math teacher, and he was definitely one of my favorites, during the time that he was in the class, he used to pull tricks on me. And one of the tricks that was my favorite all time was when they came into the classroom, all the graphing calculators were laid out on a table next to the wall by the door. And he and his best friend got together, and he came over and talked to me while his best friend, and made me face the opposite way while his best friend was over with the graphing calculators, printing on every calculator, your batteries are low, your batteries are low, your batteries are low. So that when the bell rang and class began and the kids went to get their graphing calculators, almost everyone said, your batteries are low. And I had this inundation of students saying, I need new batteries, I need new batteries. So he used to play tricks on me all the time, and he and his best friend did. And years later, when he was becoming a teacher, he was doing his practicum in a school, and then his student teaching. And my daughter actually is a teacher and was in that school. And he recognized her as a Clancy. And at lunchtime, when they were in the teacher's lounge, he went up to her and he said, you're a Clancy, aren't you? And she said, yes, I am. And she said, you're a Stokes, aren't you? His dad is one of the counselors at Marysville-Pilchuck. And he said, yes, I am. And he said, I want you to know that your mom is the reason that I'm becoming a math teacher. And so Megan felt really good, my daughter felt really good that this was said in front of the rest of the staff in the school that she was working in. And it made her feel like her mom, was really worthwhile. But anyway, Matt did eventually become a math teacher, and the jokes that he used to play on me, I think, was one of the things that was one of my favorite things. And then to find out that I made a difference in his life too was really cool.
So that amazing story about the humor, because I know from personal experience last year, actually, the class was very quiet. We were all testing, and a boy walks to the front of the room to turn in his test. And you saw this as a golden opportunity. When he puts his test down, you yell as loud as you can, what do you think you're doing? So the whole class starts staring at this one boy who turned his test in, and he stares you back in the eye with the fear of God in his eyes, because he has no idea what he's done wrong, and you start busting out laughing because you just wanted to give this guy a hard time.
One of the best kids in school, never got in trouble from anybody before, I'm sure.
It's just, having your class was just something new every day, something funny, something to lift your spirits, and math of all things. So
Well, one of the things that I told you I had to take a lot of classes.
yes.
One of the classes that I took was about the brain. And one of the things that we learned in that class is that kids are more receptive to learning if they're smiling. Just the simple act of smiling changes the endorphins in your body and makes you receptive to learning. So I think it's really important to use humor and have kids smiling. I mean, not just because I know they're going to learn better, although I do know that, but I also want to make it fun. I just think you're more receptive to learning if it's a joy.
I can actually second that, because you always hear about the classes that are a dread to go to. Hey, don't make me go to so-and-so's class today. But then, on the other end, you have the fun teacher that supposedly doesn't teach anything. But in your class, I can guarantee you I did struggle at times, and I learned well through the class, but I had fun doing it. Again, math, the most notorious subject of a pain. It's,
Dread.
Yeah. That's actually another question. What drove you to math, of all things?
Well, it's interesting because when I was in high school, I did very well in math up until my junior year of high school, when I took what would now be called pre-calculus, but that's not what was called then, and then calculus. And I struggled through both of those classes. I had a hard time. I was working 20 hours a week. I was very active in my church youth group, and I wasn't getting all my homework done. When I would get home from work or my meetings, I would sit down on my bed with my pillows propped up and my homework in front of me, and I would start doing my homework, and I would wake up in the morning with the pillows still propped up and the homework still in front of me, incomplete. So I really struggled through the last 2 years of math when I was in high school, and I determined that I wasn't good at math at that point. And so I decided that when I went to college, I was only going to take whatever math was required. And I knew there was some math you had to take. So I took the ones I had to take, and I got A's in them, but I was afraid of math. And if I hadn't quit school after 2 years, got married, had my kids, and then decided 25 years later to go back to school, I never would have become a math teacher. I needed that time off to realize how much I really truly did enjoy math and how I missed it, and that was really what I wanted to do. I actually started out in college with a major in English and a minor in drama. Yeah, and then I ended up switching to sociology, and then later on when I went back to school, that's when I said what I really want to do is teach math. So I had to come around full circle to realize that those feelings that I had about math in my junior and senior year were only temporary, and that I could do something about it. So.
Definitely not the most inviting subject. I think second year being in pre-calculus, it's hard.
It is hard.
Not the easiest thing. And thank you for teaching it, because who else will? You know, you said you wanted to be a teacher ever since elementary school. Okay, well, I'm sorry. We're going to have to take a break. This is about another hard class, though. It's about the stress of school. I don't want to spoil it too much for you guys. All right. I'd like to apologize once again, as it seems didn't have much audio in it. It was a story about a boy who took classes a bit too hard for him and slowly went insane, needless to say. But it's looking like we are actually out of time for today. So, Ms. Clancy, is there anything you want to tell people of Marysville, people of Getchell, people of ISC?
Of the USA.
One of the things that I really valued as a teacher was having small learning communities. And I sure hope that we get to keep them as long as we can, because I think having small learning communities gave us an opportunity to really get to know our students much better. And I think that made our students very successful in turn. So being a part of ISC was really important to me as a teacher because of the small learning communities. I hope we keep them.
Very well said. Same symbolizes the feelings of all of us here at ISC. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for
well,
having
you
me.
dropped in my quote. Thank you.